What is the meaning of life? This question presupposes that there is a meaning of life. In order to delve into this question, one must examine the concept of consciousness and whether consciousness is simply an emergent property of biological processes or whether it exists as a separate entity. As a scientist, foremost, I must state that there is no significant evidence of such a separate consciousness, and it would be challenging to make a case for such an understanding of consciousness. However, let us consider this concept philosophically. If consciousness does exist as an entity outside of biological systems, then its only purpose would be intricately woven into the concepts of good and evil. It is challenging to fathom a necessity or purpose for such a consciousness, if not for guiding actions while considering the intrinsic good or evil of any actions. Ultimately, the question of consciousness becomes a question of the existence of good and evil as entities. Are good and evil abstractions of social construct, or do these concepts exist as concrete entities woven into the fabric of the cosmos? Only if such themes exist as entities rather than as abstract concepts formulated by intelligent, self-aware beings like humans, then it would invoke the necessity for the consideration of the entity of consciousness. If not for the concept of good or evil, a conscious being is simply a self-aware entity observing and acting upon the universe in a deterministic fashion. There would be no need for consciousness to exist as a separate entity outside of the biological organism. So let us consider consciousness as a separate entity to be necessary only in order to contemplate good and evil if such concepts actually exist. Let us therefore define good and evil. A predator capturing and consuming prey, irrespective of the amount of physical and/or emotional pain it might cause, cannot be said to be committing an act of evil. A black hole swallowing a solar system containing life forms cannot be considered evil. Let us define evil as an act which is hurtful to any party without being beneficial to any party. If there is benefit to oneself, then one might consider this an act of selfishness rather than distinctly evil. Or if there's a benefit to another party, one can attribute the motivation to be altruistic in a sense, even if that action might be misguided. An example of an act of evil would be an individual who tortures another individual purely as a sadistic act. An act of theft would be considered immoral, but in this sense not necessarily evil, as there is some benefit to one party. One may argue that the sadist derives personal pleasure when inflicting pain, but this emotion is purely pathological, as there is no logical reason why they should derive pleasure from such an activity. The point to consider then is whether they commit these acts because of a biochemical or neurological pathology, or whether there is such a thing as evil. If we follow this definition of evil, then good would be a constructive force which benefits oneself, others, or the environment in some manner, whereas evil would be a destructive force. Both life, and in a sense even the cosmos, operates on a principle of evolution by natural selection. The reason humanity is fascinated with the question of the meaning of life is due to the amazement that one feels when contemplating the absolute beauty of nature, both here on Earth and in the cosmos beyond. Beauty of science is astounding. That beauty prevails in the universe in the form of mathematics, physics, and biology. The universe and the beauty of the laws of science exist as constructive forces which gave rise to our cosmos. Even something such as the death of a star can be a constructive force. Supernovas are a great example of this, But even if a star dies and becomes a white dwarf and eventually burns out, its atoms and energy will be recycled. Perhaps even a black hole is a constructive force and the birthplace of other universes. Empty space does not exist and is now understood to be teeming with energy and potential. It seems that if pure evil exists as an entity, it is sporadic and likely a sign of pathology or perhaps inefficiency. If one views the cosmos with a sense of awe, the awe must be for its beauty, or put another way, its constructive forces, which we will call good. The word good intrinsically refers to constructiveness. Similarly, the term love can be associated with the concept of good as a constructive force, whether you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, offering natural selection advantages, or if you look at it purely philosophically. We may loosely use these terms interchangeably, love and good or goodness. Without invoking religion, on a purely philosophical level, we notice the cosmos to be beautiful and constructive in the sense that the rules of science allows for the creation of galaxies, stars, planets, and the formation of life, intelligence, and self-awareness. Thus, if consciousness is an entity, and not just an emergent property of biological processes, then good and evil may exist. Pure evil, based on our definitions, seems rare, and the universe seems to be governed by constructive processes based simply on the existence of ordered structure in the cosmos and the existence of life. If we equate goodness or love with constructive processes, then it seems the universe is indeed filled with goodness and love.